Hi everyone, it's Brendan here. I'm super excited today to be interviewing Catherine Lyle from Integrated Men's Health. She's a porn addiction specialist and helps tackle some of the big issues that we have facing the porn industry, the normalization of kind of unhealthy sexual behaviors, and looking at some of the issues that are facing us today. Super excited. Also, Catherine's got a new book coming out, so we'll talk about that towards the end of our chat. So welcome, Catherine.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. All right, so let's start by talking about porn addiction. What is porn addiction?
Okay, so a lot of people don't associate porn with the word addiction unless they're right down the rabbit hole and it's all secret squirrel and they haven't told anyone. But even then, when I treat men and I do a few questions, when they first contact me, they say, I'm not a porn addict or anything. I don't have any problems with porn. I just want to come and see you for, mental health or whatever. And I'll say, let me just establish that. How often are you watching it? And they're like, oh, it's only once a day. So, that is the severe end of the porn addiction. We define porn addiction by a number of ways. And one of them is a psychology textbook definition of if you can't go without something for a month, then you have an addiction to that thing. So we're all addicted to our phones and coffee and soft drink and sugar and all the things. So if you're watching porn once a month or more, you are classified as watching it regularly and therefore, sit in the addiction category. We also look at how often you're masturbating. So if you're masturbating once a month and watching porn once a month, you absolutely hands down have a porn addiction because you're not masturbating without it. I would even go as far as saying if you were watching, masturbating once every 2 months and watching porn that one time, then you still have a porn addiction because you're not doing self-pleasure without it. So that's at one end. It's a scale. It's not just a one size fits all. The scale is that end of the scale. And I had a 71-year-old who was watching porn once a month and masturbating once a month. And he was almost stamping his feet saying, having this tantrum, I'm not a porn addict. I'm not a porn addict. And I said to him, how old were you when you first saw porn? And it was a 55-year porn addiction that he had not considered was a porn addiction. So, I see it all day, every day from, the young ones to the guys in their 80s who haven't had erections for 20 years, who are still watching 2 hours of porn a day. So there's lots of stories, but it is a scale. And everyone else falls into that scale somewhere. And we do look at the ratio as well as how old you are and how long you've been looking at it for. But most of the time, anyone that is watching porn has a problem with it. It's just, or there's symptoms of porn addiction, porn-induced erectile dysfunction, or, difficulty having orgasm, mental health issues. Like there's always, I haven't seen anyone that watches porn that hasn't had, doesn't have some problems. But a porn addiction itself is, it's a neural addiction. It's an addiction that the brain is addicted to itself. So everyone thinks it's a sex addiction or a behavioral addiction. It's not. It's a neural addiction. And the brain produces a whole lot of chemicals and hormones when you watch porn. When you watch porn and couple it with masturbation, it's like a fireworks display goes off in the brain, and you couldn't get more of a fireworks display in terms of chemicals and hormones than you can with porn and masturbation. Yeah. And if you think back to, you're a 17-year-old now and you've just got a smartphone and your mates have sent you some stuff, you can imagine like the feelings and the chest feelings and the shortness of breath and the, hairs on the back of your neck and the tingles in your, so that's all natural reactions to stimulus, which is the arousal or limbic system. However, when it's porn and its chemicals and hormones, and then say you watch it the next day, then the next day, then the next day, the brain has to adjust itself to accommodate for all those extra chemicals and hormones. It just can't survive in its current state. And when it does that, it changes the neural pathways. neural pathways being like little programs. A classic example is when my parents fight, or I get rejected by my parents, or I get in trouble at school, then I masturbate. I get to feel a certain way, and then whatever the program after that might be, I feel relaxed, but it also might be I feel empty or I feel anxious once I ejaculate type thing. So that's a neural pathway. We have neural pathways for all sorts of things, not just the sexual stuff.
So it is very much. I was actually going to ask you if it's primarily behavioural, but as you're saying, it is a neurological addiction of the classic sense that people normally equate addiction, say, with drugs or drinking or something like that, but this is firing up the same kind of pathways. One question I have for you, and kind of relates to this. So we're at a very interesting stage, I reckon, with pornography and the like, in that we have this kind of weird puritanism at the moment, but we've got a very kind of inherited taboo about this, but it's everywhere. I mean, it's the worst kept secret in the world, but people don't typically talk about it. It's being normalized, I think, in so many respects. So I'd love to ask about you and how you got into this. So you're based in Melbourne, in Australia. You're helping people, I imagine, all from all around the world and all backgrounds. So how did you get into this kind of taboo area, and what made you become fascinated with this area?
That's the thing. It's on one hand, there's so much shame around it, because not one single man, and I've spoken to over 25,000 men, I've treated over 4,000 in person, one-on-one, and not one of them has told their partner or a mate the exact details of their habit, if you like. So it's taboo on one hand, but then it's completely acceptable and encouraged in society on the other. And it's very confusing for men and women, and now kids as they come through. It all started for me when I quit my corporate job. I was in corporate for 20 years and quit and studied kinesiology alongside of that. Was working kind of part-time, maybe seeing one client a week, but then did some personal development and decided it was time. So I opened a men's alternative health centre in Chelsea, in Melbourne, and got some other practitioners in, and we started specialising in men. And at the same time, so I was already treating men and had been doing that for years. And I was starting to see a massive pattern around sexual health, erectile dysfunction, difficulty having orgasm. And I guess it chose me. I just started to ask a lot of questions. When I first started, my consult form was 1 page. It's now like 5. Because that's how you get men to talk. You actually just ask them all the questions. They just tick the boxes, and I was seeing patterns and having the same conversations. And anyway, a porn addiction specialist contacted me and said, I'd like to come and work in your clinic. He paid for a day to come in. He didn't turn up. He had no clients. But what I had done was change a little, I just added a tick box on my form so that I could refer people to him. And it just said, do you watch porn? And so he didn't end up working with me, but at the same time I call them the porn angels. I had another, in my personal life, I started dating a man who could see, I was opening the clinic and what I did for a living. And we had a big, long 5-hour chat in a cafe one day where he was like, here's all my stuff. I used to have a porn addiction, and I've got aggression issues and mental health issues, and I've got anxiety, and I've got erectile dysfunction. And I was like, whoa, this is a lot. But I was like, yay, this man's like opening up to me, because men don't do that. We're laying it all out on the table. I said to him, I can't be your practitioner, but there's a whole lot of people in my clinic that can help. Bravo, well done. But what happened was I hadn't as well, because I didn't know. He hadn't joined the dots. So he didn't realize that his porn addiction, of how bad it was, and he said it was so bad he couldn't even talk to me about it. In the past, of course, he hadn't joined those dots together. So he didn't realize that the aggression, the mental health, the erectile dysfunction, and all of that was happening was a direct symptom of the porn addiction. And over that 3 weeks that we dated, it was a bit horrific, seeing the after effects, I guess, of the way he was scrolling through Facebook, and every second picture was a woman bent over or with her boobs out. And, you know, our daughters, he had two and I had one, and they were like around us, and he was scrolling through all this stuff. He started to say to me, you'd look great in this. And he would send me a picture of like a blonde, big boobs, you know, stilettos in a tight hot pink dress. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I started to doubt myself. I started to feel really insecure. I was really triggered on a woman level, you know, and I didn't want to be his practitioner because I'm not here to fix the guys I date. You know, so it was really confronting. And long story short, the two of them coming into my life at the same time, I started to do some research. And in 2018, I started a research project. So it's a survey that's still online collecting data. And that's what my new book includes, is the review of that data. And it came back at the time that 97% of men were watching porn regularly.
Sure. And yeah, I want to ask you about that. So particularly from a female perspective, or a woman's perspective, and I guess in terms of same-sex relationships as well, there'll be, I imagine, the trend of that shame kind of acceptability thing be happening as well. But I'm particularly interested in women. So there's a couple of questions about that. Do you treat women as well, or is it just men? Do you find there's an issue? And the second one is, what are the I think men often don't understand or people generally don't understand the consequences of their actions. So they might do something and then they think, oh, it's okay. Nobody knows, it'll be fine. But it actually does play out in other people's lives, and particularly in relationships and dating. And I've actually heard that quite a bit, that it can really, you know, mess with people's relationships and things. So
absolutely,
I'd like to hear about that, the kind of women's perspective for being on the receiving end of that kind of porn culture.
Sure. So Integrated Men's Health doesn't treat women, but I have been treating women for over 15 years, you know, without that business name. So I do see women. I have treated probably 3 women for porn addiction. So it hasn't been anywhere near the amount, because that's not my target audience. And we weren't, and I haven't studied women to the nth degree that I have with men, but it is the same addiction. It is a neural addiction. It affects women just the same, in terms of the brain, mental health, the brain damage, loss of sensitivity to the genitals, difficulty having orgasm without, you know, all of the stimulus. And I am starting to see or hear from the 20-something men that I'm talking to, and it's coming from the guys who are interviewing me, which is really, really cool, because they don't watch porn, but they're getting, the women are wanting to watch porn during sex or before sex with the guys. So it's coming from the women. So we do know that's out there. Pornhub's traffic is 1/3 women. That's just one of the sites. So it is more prevalent now with the young ones coming through, because it's just what people do, and it's what guys have done for eternity. And now with smartphones, you know, the women are now supercharged by the same chemicals and hormones, and they can't be present, they can't relax, they can't, you know, it's all about this position and that position. And these guys are telling me that the women are asking to be slapped, to be choked, which is just, you know, to be spat on, which just blows my mind, because the rest of us are affected negatively by that behavior in men, and we're trying everything we can to try and have consent and boundary conversations that are sexy, which is very difficult to do, you know, when you first meet someone, to kind of suss out what that's about. So yeah, it's not fun being on the other end of a man that watches a lot of porn, or that has watched porn, you know, once a week for his whole entire life. There's no way you can't be influenced by that, whether it's a moral perspective, an educational, sexual perspective, or, you know, just thinking, like you said, that what they're doing is okay, because there's a lot of women out there that are, well, you're naked for starters. So confrontation while you are naked is not something anyone is going to enter into, especially any woman that's been abused in the past. And if we look at the stats in terms of women and abuse, right down to, rape, but right up to, just sexual harassment or being choked during a sexual, situation, it's very, women are timid and they don't know how to react. They don't know how to deal with men that have impotence and don't say anything, or they're trying to choke them or have rough sex when you first meet someone. It's just, there's a lot of chapters in my book around this, my personal journey, which is really scary, because, there's so many threats of defamation and, stalkers and all the things now. And it has been a rough journey for me being a woman in this field, and I have been attacked and sexually harassed constantly. I receive dick pics all the time in my business and in my personal life. They see a woman talking about sex and they just, it's like, here, it's a power tripper. So yeah, it's been
well, this is the kind of unhealthy the unhealthy thing, I think, and the thing that really, really, really terrifies me is you've got young guys and young girls growing up, 17, 18, 19, kind of coming into their early adulthood with this immense cynical, and it's a corporation. I mean, people are pushing it's now advertising, marketing, pushing their product onto people. And it's really hard to negotiate for the best of us. I mean, it takes time to learn communication skills and set boundaries and to have reasonable expectations of people and yourself and others. The thing that scares me is that you've got kids growing up in these very, very highly sexualized environments with poor messaging, and really, I'd be, worried if there's a 19-year-old woman growing up with a 19-year-old boy who's watching excessive amount of pornography. I think this is a really, I personally think this has gotten much worse now. I think there's, but maybe as an expert, do you have a few words on that?
Sure. So my Instagram following, I would have a guess at. The ones that contact me anyway, because that's how I find out how old they are. When I first started talking, there was one guy I used to do, 15-minute free coaching calls for people, and I didn't think to ask how old they were. And there was one boy that was telling me, he had a very deep voice as well, and he was American, and I thought, he's very mature for his age, and we're having this chat on the phone, and he said that he's watching porn 36 times a day, every day.
Wow.
Every day over the school holidays, it was like 32 to 36, and he was ejaculating every time, and he was watching porn every time. And I thought he said 6, and I was like, 6? And he said, no, 36. I'm like, I can't even comprehend. He's now 18. He's very unwell. He's looking at a double hip replacement, bone marrow transplants. Like, he's got massive mental health issues, but his physical body has broken down because of that habit. And that's because of the excessive ejaculation, the excessive hormones and chemicals being produced. I'm now linking prostate cancer to porn addiction, and also male suicide because of the damage that it does. But 60% of my Instagram following is underage, I've worked out, and they're all brutalized by porn. And that's the word that I use, because they're impotent, they haven't kissed a girl, they haven't had sex before, and they've got performance anxiety, they're failing in school, they've got anxiety, social anxiety, depression, and then of course we've got lockdown on top of all of that. These kids are a mess, and I can't get to them because I can't treat them legally without a parent or a guardian present or paying for it. I can't do it for free, and we can't access these kids. So it's a massive problem. They've got porn in their pocket. The average age of kids seeing porn now is between 8 and 11 years old. And I treat plenty of men that have seen it from the age of 5. And I've also researched all the serial killers in relation to porn addiction. That's in my new book as well. I went from one end of the scale right to the other. And the average age of those men, those serial killers seeing porn is age 5. And we know that, a kid's brain is developing up until the age of, 25, 27. So they are setting themselves up for failure. And you ask the men, what other addictions do you have or have you had? And it's alcohol and gambling and this and that. And I took drugs for a while and blah, blah, blah. I have an addictive personality, they'll say. I'm
Yeah.
like, no, you were watching porn from a very young age and you have got a brain that is addicted to itself, to the
Mm.
rush, to the thrill. So we've got massive problems with the teens, and they haven't even had sex yet. And then there's the girls who are, the highest rate of sexual injuries is being reported with GPs. The GPs and the police have declared it a global health crisis, which, I mean, if they're doing it, then, this was the pandemic before the pandemic.
Yep.
And no one would listen to me. And they didn't understand, because I was coming from, a lot of my healing work is spiritual, and I work with energy and I work with quantum physics, and I'm a kinesiologist. So the second that you're not an academic, people don't, take you seriously. But they don't have the teenagers messaging them on Instagram saying, please help me,
Well, my experience, they don't want to get into that area because it's too helpful.
Yeah.
What I want to say to you, the interesting thing for people listening, and one of the things I think is an interesting thing about this messaging, so it's not anti-sex. In fact, people confuse love, pornography, and sex, I think, and say, oh, they're all the same thing, and da 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 da.
Yep.
But a healthy sexual relationship surely is a good thing. It means that you're, I think, as your message comes across, it's about being in touch with yourself, and also
Yes.
being able to communicate in a kind of a positive way with another person, and kind of take their needs into consideration, and have a all-round healthy
Absolutely.
relationship. So we're not saying it's this is an anti-sex thing, or boys are bad. I think they're kind of a victim of this whole thing. But I do want to
Yeah.
talk about the next topic, which is the pornography industry. And
Mhm.
this is obviously grown to a massive part of the world and of the internet. I'm not sure how, maybe you could tell us what the percentage of traffic is on the internet related to porn, but I suspect it's a substantial amount. And as you said, some of these sites have grown into kind of beasts. But just tell us about what's happening in the pornography industry, and how did it kind of come into be this pervasive?
Well, we have stats from Pornhub regularly because they release them, which is quite interesting the way they release them.
That's a large porn site for people who are not familiar.
Yeah, so Pornhub is, and I don't have it off the top of my head, but a lot of the big companies are actually run by the same company. The small porn sites, the big porn sites, it's all run by, I've forgotten the name of their company, but they own
Like a
Pornhub.
Google of porn, is it?
Yeah.
Everything. Oh, interesting.
And this is the thing. So the stats, I can remember the 2019 stats. Every minute, there's over 207,000 hits every minute on Pornhub. That's just one site. If you looked at Google, who would never release their stats, that stuff's free. You don't have to have a membership. So, when people start talking about age verification, it's like, they just Google it. There's no stopping a teen. We've got porn blockers that we can put on their phones and things like that. But my whole premise is you have to do the work. You have to work out what's going on, what's happening in the brain, how to repair the brain, how to repair the body, how to change your habits and behaviors around, sexual health and sexuality. But Pornhub is the big one, is the big game player. And over COVID, they granted all of their members a premier or premium membership, which normally cost a lot of money, for free over COVID, to reward people that were in lockdown. And they did the same thing on a cruise ship back in the day in Australia when COVID started, feels like 10 years ago. Where all the cruise ships were stuck. They were giving out free porn. And we had people on video giving that account saying this is what they're doing in here. So, there's the whole world is a whole conspiracy, as we know. And it's run by big pharma, porn, the porn industry, sex sells and all that thing, all that stuff. I'm part of I know a number of people in my field who campaign against these things. Dolce and Gabbana had an ad where, they were strangling a woman. There was four of men, and she's laying there in her beautiful brown skin and her tan, and
Yeah, yeah.
just, and it was all about. So there's things in shopping centers and Honey Burdette, I think they're called, and all of the bras and things, and it's just everywhere, and the kids have got access to it, and I'm telling the parents now that they think that their kids aren't watching porn. We were looking at porn back in my day when porn wasn't even available to us. Someone threw a magazine over the fence and we were like, oh my God, and then when mum came out, we ran, but the VHS back then, you had to actually go to a shop and hire and you had to show your ID to get these movies and magazines. They were 18 plus, and that's not the case anymore. So
I've even noticed it like on YouTube, and
Yeah.
I think they're building it into the algorithm. So every time I get onto my phone on YouTube, there's like, it seems like 50 Hooters girls just scrolling across the screen, and I'm like, what's this about? I mean, I'm usually reading some academic thing or a research thing, or I'm definitely not using YouTube as a
no
kind of perv site or whatever. But it seems like it's that level of normalization, which is crazy for me. Like I said many times, we can't talk about health, but we can watch someone get strangled from the living room. I did have a question. So there'll be people watching saying, "Oh, come on, it's not that bad. It's really, I guess to the extreme, they'd say, well, it's healthy and it's okay. You've got a free society that can spread, say what they want, and the women like it because they get paid or something like that."
Yeah.
What's your response to this kind of position?
So like you said before, sex isn't porn, porn isn't sex. And that's how I start off one of my chapters in the book, because people are confused. They think it's the same thing. It's got nothing to do with it. You're watching sexual activity, but it's not sex. Sex should be, and it's taken me 46 years to be able to say the word should around this, because I get judged all the time, but that's not how sex is meant to be. You're meant to be having fully connected energetic experiences where the top of your head feels like it's going to blow off and you feel like you're leaving your body, and it's all about energy exchange and transference and full body orgasms and multiple orgasms for men, and learning how to orgasm without ejaculation. And because people think I'm sex negative, and I'm like, no, I actually teach this stuff, and I've always on a personal level known that that's how it's meant to be. Yet we've got all of this other stuff out there that's teaching men differently, and when they show up naked and vulnerable, they're like, this is how it goes, and you're like, no, this is how it goes, and you have to it's just like this. No one's on the same page. And I just think society has lost its way in so many ways, and it all starts. Sexual energy is life force energy. It is your chi, it is your jing, it is your pranic energy, whatever you want to call it. Energy, we're all made up of energy, and energy was there at conception. It's why you are a human being now. And that's what sex is about. And so when a lot of the people in the tantric community will promote porn as how to spice your life up. And this is where I distance myself from all of these people, because ethical porn is an argument I hear all the time. It's still porn, and it still has the same reaction in the body as violent porn does. That's yes, granted, that's a whole other thing. But the chemical reaction that you're having when you watch any kind of sexual activity is what your brain is addicted to, and that all causes brain damage, right? So when people come at me with the moral stuff, or the society, or men are visual, or what, I'm single and I have to, how else am I going to get a release or enjoyment? It's like, wow, you need to really study the body. You need to understand. This gives people brain damage, and I'm talking brain damage worse than a heroin addict. I'm not joking you. There's scans online that have the evidence. There's a porn addict, a normal brain, and a heroin brain, and the heroin brain isn't as bad as the porn addict brain. It affects the frontal lobe, your decision making, your focus, concentration, memory, your emotional expression, your sexual behaviors. That's where depression and anxiety come from. It decreases the gray matter in the brain. So it's all your motor skills and your coordination and nervous system. It causes so many problems. So when people come to me and say, these arguments, I'm like, I come from a science perspective, and I have to, because if I stood on a soapbox and said, stop watching porn, it's bad for you, as a woman, I would have had way more nervous breakdowns than I have over the attacks that I've had. I've had people literally bulldozing me and threatening me and my family because of what I do and what I say. So it's like taking candy away from the baby, and people don't like it. And there are other people in my field, even men who work in porn addiction recovery, who have had death threats. And, so it's a thing, and it's a silent thing. And you might think your child's not watching it, your husband's not watching it. And, I'm not here to tell you that they are. However, you'll never know if they are or not. You'll just never know. So spicing up your relationship with porn is one of the worst things that you can do, because what that's telling you is that there's a problem in the relationship, or you're bored, or you want to, try something new. Talk to each other, communicate with each other. We have intimacy exercises that we get couples to do. As soon as you turn outside your relationship, whether it's a threesome or, an affair or anything, or even talking on dating sites or porn, you are inviting that into your relationship, and that's never going to be healthy.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's move on to this last point about how you actually help people. So I know during lockdown, people, as we were talking before, don't have much of an outlet. They can't, at least in Melbourne, you can't go to the gym, you can't go to a massage, you can't do so many things you're allowed outside for a little time. So, and then you've got, companies trying to cash in and take advantage of people and the like. So if people are, particularly guys are at home, they're involved in a lot of porn, or their consumption's gone up or something like this, or even if they don't realize it and they just want to kind of free themselves. It sounds like, as you're saying, free your mind and your body will follow, and you'll actually have a more pleasurable, better life when you're free from all that kind of negativity. So how do I'm kind of wondering, do guys just jump on? Is there an easy process to get in touch with you? What's the kind of trigger that makes them go? Is it themselves or other people? I imagine it takes a bit of courage to come forward and say, look, I've got a bit of a problem here. I might have, Catherine, can you help me out?
Sure. I think it's like with anything, you have, I think it's 8 touch points with anyone before they actually dive in and trust you and do the work. And it's the same with any sales, I guess. So if we can look at it from that point of view, I can answer up to 300 messages a day, and that's, 30 people times 10 messages back and forth, plus my social media engagement. I'm always on the phone. I have strong boundaries around it as well, but people are reaching out in all sorts of ways, a lot of them inappropriately. And, I've been condemned in the past for not having compassion for the men that are sending me dick pics and whatever. And it's like, no, because you can still have manners and have a porn addiction and boundaries. So, there's a funnel, I guess, and not a sales funnel necessarily, but, I have my website set up so that the teens can go on and get as much free stuff as they can. So there's hundreds of videos on YouTube. There's demonstrations of my treatments on there as well. All the free ebooks. I've got ebook on erectile dysfunction, one on porn addiction, and one on my recommendations for essential oils for sexual health, for impotence and things. So they can get all of that for free. And then the 2-week challenge is the next step. The 2-week challenge is a masturbation challenge where we teach them conscious self-pleasure, teaching you how to do simple breath work, arousing the limbic system and using all the senses, and timings, because it is a training exercise. So we're trying to break the chains of the neural pathways and things. So that's the most simplest one. That's 2-week challenge. Then there's a 30-day program. So the guys that do the 2-week challenge are like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yeah, and this is working. My erections are returning. I don't feel like watching porn now. Because if you do no FAP, which is no porn, masturbation, or orgasm, that's a hashtag movement that's, you know, billions of men are following, they throw the baby out with the bathwater. They throw out all healthy male masculinity and sexuality, and I make it about ritual. So we teach them how to masturbate properly, because whatever you're doing in masturbation will happen in sex. So if you're doing a quick one in the shower, or you're doing it quick because of porn, you'll have premature ejaculation, you'll have impotence issues because you're overstimulating your brain constantly. So when a woman shows up, you know, there's no chance in hell that all of that's just going to be okay, you know, because you're training your body a certain way. So we take out porn, that's one link in the chain. We link the other three back up. Then we take out ejaculation, and we teach you how to have orgasm without ejaculation. We start that in the 30-day program. And then there's a 90-day program, which is a one-on-one coaching each week. That's getting a review at the moment, but that will be up and running again soon. So it just depends on how much, you know, and I have those offerings because I'm not going to waste my time. If you don't want to step up, you just do the 2-week challenge where I'm not involved. Do you know what I mean? So it's important that people can get access to this work. And that's why I give a lot of my stuff away for free, because I'm just here to help people more than anything, you know, and I can focus on the guys one-on-one that want to fly in or step up, or, you know, buy the packages or whatever. And that's great. But for the rest of the world, and a lot of the guys in India, they don't have the income. A lot of students have these problems, you know, they're in their 20s, but they're still not, you know, financially viable. So I have to be able to help everyone. So yeah, and then the new book that's coming out.
Yeah, let's talk about the new book.
Yes,
so
I don't have it in front of me.
I was going to say, first of all, I'll put some links up to your website and services. And again, I think you can tell Catherine's got a lot of expertise and experience in this, and seems like a very positive one as well. So if you're having doubts, then I think you're probably moving from one side, which is maybe a world that's not working out too well for you, into a more of a positive scenario. But let's talk about your book. I know this is coming out, very exciting.
6 days till launch. It's full on. And so up until this point, like I said, I've come from the science perspective, and we had to educate people for the last 8 years on what this was doing to them and their bodies, so that they could then make the decision themselves whether they want to continue or not. But this book was meant to be released on my deathbed under a different name because it's a tell-all, and it's very, very vulnerable. It's got my stuff in there, and it's got my experiences with sexual assault, sexual abuse, sexual harassment, you know, my experience with men. It has stories in there of women who have been, you know, in a similar position to myself in terms of domestic violence, sex trafficking, you know, sexual assault. Then we have men that have got stories in there who are porn addicts or have been, and how much it's destroyed their life. And there's one story in there that's going to turn into a movie. I can guarantee you, I nearly died when I was working with this person to try and tease this out of him when he had never told anyone. You wouldn't even believe it. You're just not going to believe some of the stuff that's in there in this book. So it's called The Uncensored Threat, Losing Generations to Pornography, for a reason, because I'm seeing that from, you know, 12 to, I think 86 was my oldest client. This doesn't discriminate, and we are losing generations sexually, mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically. You know, women in my area, so entrepreneurs and business independent women, I haven't been on a date for 3 years because of this. There's no one to date, you know, and I'm doing this for my daughter so that she has a positive sex experience growing up, in terms of the way she's being treated now. And also, you know, she can find a husband that doesn't have, you know, this problem. So it covers sex trafficking, pedophilia, serial killers. So the first chapter is porn is the seething core of society. So it sits down here, and then what else do we have around this? It's not just about the science. Yes, there's some stuff in there, obviously, on porn addiction, the brain science, the suicidal stuff, the connection to prostate cancer as well. And at the back, there's lots and lots of exercise. I give it all away for, well, it's not free, but, you know, when you purchase the book, you get all of my information and the tools. There's intimacy exercises, the 2-week challenge you get for free. You know, there's stuff for men's groups to use and open this in, you know, this discussion. So it's everything that could possibly have come out of me.
Yeah, it sounds like a triumph, as I'd say, in the literary world. So,
oh, it's a victory.
but I was going to say you could definitely pick it up on the Integrated Men's Health website. And are you putting it on Amazon or other places?
Yeah, so it's not on the website yet. You can follow me on Integrated Men's Health on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and LinkedIn. And all of the links on Wednesday, the 22nd, it goes on sale for 99 cents for 24 hours, just to get as many sales as we can to get the message out there. I also need to hit Amazon bestseller just because of my own personal journey has been horrendous with this writing of the book. So I'm really determined to, you know, to get this out there, and so they can get it for 99 cents. Or the paperback is available that day as well, and I'll be doing lots of interviews. It will keep going, the momentum will keep going. So you can find the links on my social media. If I can find the time, I will update my website, but don't look for it there.
Excellent. I was going to say, let's everybody help Catherine get on the bestseller list, because I think this is a fantastic cause, particularly for guys. Let's get on this because I think it's time. We've seen, I think this is a tipping point. We've got this lockdown, this craziness going on, and it's a great time to start asking questions about what's going on in society and who's working in our best interest and who isn't. I can clearly say that Catherine and her team are working in our best interest, but so let's step up, let's help Catherine, and also let's really tackle this head on, because it's not healthy for us, it's not doing us any good, and it's not helping the people we love as well. So Catherine, I want to thank you so much for jumping on. Awesome conversation. I was so excited to talk to you, and good luck and all the best with your work as well.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. All right. See you, Ron. Have a great day.